The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web. But some energies do not belong to that web at all. They merely brush against it, like a hand pressed to glass before the glass shatters. High above Coruscant, in the smog-veiled dark between the orbital shipping lanes and the maglev spires, the sky tore open without warning. There was no hyperspace flare, no ion trail, no signature any Imperial sensor operator had been trained to recognize. One moment the patrol lanes were quiet. The next, a seam of white-gold light split the atmosphere like a wound reopening. And three things fell through it at once. The first was a battered star cruiser unlike any Quat shipyard had ever produced, saucer-hulled, sleek, trailing plasma from a ruptured nacelle. The second was a golden-haired man in torn orange and blue, plummeting with his arms outstretched as though daring gravity to try harder. The third fell silently, cape snapping like a banner, eyes already scanning the skyline below with the calm of someone who had fallen from far greater heights. Goku hit the permacrete of an abandoned landing platform hard enough to crack it in a spiderweb radius, rolled once, and came up grinning despite the ringing in his skull. "Okay," he muttered, glancing at his hands. His ki felt wrong, thin in places, tangled in others, like a river that had been dammed and rerouted mid-flow. The immortal art breakthrough he and the big guy in the cape had been chasing for 6 months of grueling cultivation had been so close. Now his center felt like a half-finished sentence. Superman landed beside him without a sound, boots settling onto the platform's edge as gently as a held breath. He didn't feel the usual warm hum of solar charge singing through his cells. Instead, there was a flicker, present, then absent, then present again, like a signal fighting interference. He looked up. The star overhead was wrong. Refracted, filtered, through kilometers of atmospheric processing and light-scattering towers until it barely qualified as sunlight at all. "This isn't Earth," he said quietly. "And that's not our sun." Goku turned in a slow circle, taking in the impossible skyline, towers stacked upon towers, traffic lanes threading between them like veins. A city that didn't end at any horizon he could see. "Definitely not," he agreed. And then, because 6 months of cultivation training had taught him patience, even his instincts resented, he didn't immediately power up to investigate. He breathed in through the tangled ki, searching for the thread. Master Sun Wukong's manual had called the first stillness. Half a kilometer away, the Enterprise D was not faring as gently. Captain Jean-Luc Picard gripped the arm of his command chair as the ship shuddered through a landing that no starship of her class was designed to survive, let alone perform, on a planetary surface. Sparks rained from an overhead conduit. Data's fingers flew across a console. That was giving him increasingly troubling readings. "Captain," Data said, "sensors indicate we have crossed not merely a spatial boundary, but crossed into what may be an entirely different continuum. I am also detecting two significant biological energy signatures roughly 600 meters from our position, neither of which register as anything in the Federation database." "And our own status?" Picard asked, rising. "Hull breaches on decks 9 through 12. Warp core stable, but severely undercharged. We will not be leaving this planet's surface under our own power in the immediate future." Picard exhaled slowly. 40 years of Starfleet service had prepared him for first contact scenarios of every conceivable variety, but rarely one that began with his own ship, crash-landed and vulnerable. "Then we proceed as we always do," he said. "Carefully. Mr. Worf, assemble an away team. Dr. Crusher, Commander Riker, with me. Data, maintain ship's systems and monitor those energy signatures. If they move toward us, I want to know immediately." Outside, Coruscant skies had already begun to answer a different kind of alarm. Imperial sensor stations across 3 sectors flagged the anomaly within 90 seconds, an unregistered energy bloom, a vessel matching no known configuration, and 2 biological signatures radiating power output that made a junior analyst on level 1313 nearly fall out of his chair. The report reached the Emperor's security apparatus within the hour. It reached someone else within 20 minutes. In a meditation chamber deep within the Imperial Palace, a cowled figure with a lightsaber at their hip opened eyes that had not needed sleep in years. The Inquisitor called ninth. Sister felt it before the report even arrived. A ripple in the Force unlike anything. Catalogued in her training. Not quite Jedi. Not quite Sith. Something other. Brushing against the galaxy's oldest current like static against silk. She rose without hurry. The Emperor did not tolerate delay. But he tolerated even less an Inquisitor who acted before understanding her prey. Back on the landing platform, Superman had found the first stillness Goku was still chasing. He crouched, palm flat against the cracked permacrete, and felt something the manual back home had called Tao resonance, an ancient, patient hum beneath the city's mechanical noise, older than anything built by hands. It felt impossibly familiar, like the force Goku had once described sensing during a fight with a being called Beerus, if the force had been left to steep for 10,000 years in silence. There's something under this whole planet, Superman said. Something old. Goku's grin returned, sharper now, more focused. Whatever had ripped them out of the cultivation realm mid-breakthrough. Whatever galaxy this was. Whatever the source of that ancient hum. It was a mystery worth chasing. And a mystery worth being ready for. He rolled his shoulders, he still tangled but steadying by degrees. Well, he said, let's go find out who's throwing a welcome party. Neither of them noticed the third arrival yet. The tall man in a red and black uniform, moving cautiously through the wreckage-strewn alley 2 blocks south. Phaser drawn, already broadcasting a hail on every frequency his tricorder could manage, hoping against experience that someone in this unfamiliar sky would answer. Picard's away team moved through Coruscant's Undercity, shadows with the practiced caution of officers who had walked into 100 unknown worlds and learned to trust nothing. About their first assumptions, Worf took point, phaser rifle steady, his Klingon senses bristling at a city that smelled of ozone, recycled air, and something else. A low static charge that prickled at the edges of perception like a storm that refused to arrive. Captain, Riker said, keeping his voice low as they crossed beneath an overhang dripping condensation from some unseen coolant system above. Data's last transmission. Put those energy signatures about 200 meters northeast. Both readings just spiked. Then we proceed toward them, Picard said. Slowly. Dr. Crusher, tricorder readings on the local atmosphere. Breathable, if a little thin on natural elements, Beverly Crusher replied, scanning. This entire city seems to be artificial from the ground up. I'm not reading any vegetation, any open water. Jean-Luc, wherever we are, this isn't a planet anymore. It's a machine wearing a planet's shape. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with the source of the readings. Goku and Superman stood in the open street, having just finished a conversation about which direction smelled most like answers. Goku's phrase, delivered with the same certainty he might apply to sniffing out the nearest food stall. Both turned as one at the away team's approach, and for a moment, the two groups simply stared at each other across 15 meters of grimy permacrete, each side running rapid calculations about the other's intentions. Worf raised his rifle a fraction. Superman raised a hand, palm open, not surrender, but the universal gesture of let's not. We're not here to fight, Superman said. We just fell out of the sky about 10 minutes ago, and we're trying to figure out where here is. Picard studied the two strangers with the careful neutrality of a man who had greeted Borg, Q, and a dozen godlike entities without flinching. That makes 4 of us, he said. I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. We appear to have arrived under similarly involuntary circumstances. Goku's grin widened, some of the tension bleeding out of his shoulders. He liked this one already, calm, unhurried, the kind of energy that reminded him of Master Roshi on his more serious days. I'm Goku. This is Superman. We were training somewhere really different from this. A lot more mountains, a lot less metal, and then the sky just kind of opened up. A dimensional rupture, Picard said, glancing at Crusher, who nodded slowly, cross-referencing the description against her tricorder's chaotic readings. Consistent with the energy signature data detected. It's possible we were drawn through the same event, from different points of origin. Riker lowered his weapon slightly, though his eyes never stopped moving across the rooftops. Any idea whose territory we've landed in? As if summoned by the question, the answer arrived on repulsor lift engines. Four LAT gunships screamed overhead in tight formation, spotlights stabbing down through the smog, and a clipped, amplified voice crackled across the street. Attention unidentified personnel. You are in violation of Imperial airspace and ground security protocols. Stand down and submit to scanning. White armored troopers rappelled down in practiced unison, blaster rifles snapping up in a coordinated arc that boxed both groups into a single kill zone. Their armor gleamed under the gunship lights, sleek, militarized, unmistakably a symbol of authority that expected obedience rather than negotiation. Worf's lip curled back from his teeth. Imperial, he said, tasting the word like an insult, though he had no frame of reference for what it meant here, only the tone, the posture, the absolute certainty in every trooper's stance that resistance would be a mistake they would regret. Picard raised both hands slowly, a gesture he hoped translated across whatever cultural gulf separated them. We are not hostile, he called out. We request an audience with your commanding officer. We are lost, not invading. Identify your vessel and origin, the amplified voice demanded. Our vessel is currently disabled 600 meters from this position, Picard said, choosing honesty as the only viable currency in a negotiation this asymmetric. Our point of origin is complicated. We are not affiliated with any government or military structure known to you. A pause. Then, from the lead gunship, a different figure descended, not a trooper, but someone in an officer's gray uniform, flanked by two red-armored guards whose posture suggested they answered to something far more dangerous than rank insignia. The officer's eyes swept over Picard's away team, lingered on Worf's ridged forehead with open suspicion, and then fixed on Goku and Superman with something closer to alarm. Unregistered species, the officer said into his comm link, voice tight. Repeat, multiple unregistered species. One exhibiting unclassified energy emission consistent with the anomaly report. Requesting inquisitorial escort be expedited. Goku's ears caught the word inquisitorial and filed it away as probably important, probably dangerous, definitely interesting. Beside him, Superman had gone very still, his enhanced hearing picking up something the officer hadn't said aloud. A second energy source, cold and deliberate, closing on their position from the east at a speed no ordinary transport could match. Someone else is coming, Superman murmured to Picard. Fast. And whatever it is, these soldiers are afraid of it. Picard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only outward sign of a captain recalculating an already unstable equation. Then I suggest, he said quietly, we resolve this conversation before that arrival forces our hand. Above them, cutting through the smog on a trajectory too precise to be coincidence, a single black shuttle descended toward the standoff, its running lights the deep, patient red of something that had already decided how this encounter would end. The black shuttle settled onto the street with a hiss of repulsor lift stabilizers, and every trooper present straightened as though a physical weight had pressed down on the formation. The ramp lowered. Ninth Sister emerged into the spotlight glare, her cowl drawn back, just enough to reveal a face that had long since stopped registering fear as anything but a tool to wield on others. She didn't look at the officer. She didn't look at Worf's rifle, still trained on the trooper line, or at Riker's careful stance, or at Crusher's tricorder still quietly recording. Her eyes went straight to Goku and Superman, and then, with a flicker of genuine surprise she didn't bother concealing, to the strange resonance she could feel radiating from all three newcomers at once, the humming, half-formed power that felt like the Force and yet fundamentally was not. Three anomalies, she said, almost to herself. The report undersold this. I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Picard said, stepping half a pace forward, deliberately placing himself between the Inquisitors' attention and his own away team, without making the gesture look defensive. We are not here as agents of any hostile power. We arrived through means beyond our control and wish only to locate a way home. Ninth Sister's gaze finally shifted to him, cataloging the composed authority in his bearing, the calculated calm of someone accustomed to command. The Empire does not concern itself with the sincerity of trespassers, she said. It concerns itself with what they might become. And what you might become, she added, eyes sliding back to Goku, is a question I intend to answer personally. Goku rolled his neck, feeling the old, familiar itch under his skin, not aggression, not yet, but readiness. Every fiber of his instinct told him this woman was strong, stronger than the troopers by an order of magnitude, and that whatever power she carried was cousin to the tangled, half-formed ki still settling in his own core. He said nothing yet. 6 months of cultivation discipline had taught him that the first move in an unequal fight was rarely the fist. Superman, for his part, kept his voice level. We're not looking for a fight. If your empire has protocols for foreign visitors, we're willing to go through them. Diplomatically. How refreshing, Ninth Sister said, and there was no warmth in it at all. The Empire's protocol for unregistered power is containment. Compliance would be wise. Picard felt the moment tip. Felt. With the instinct of a man who'd talked down Klingon warlords and Romulan commanders alike, that the next 15 seconds would determine whether this became a diplomatic incident or a massacre. He chose his words with the precision of a surgeon. Before you make containment your recommendation, he said, consider what your superiors will ask you when this is over. Not whether you subdued us, but whether you understood us first. An empire that values control surely values information about what it seeks to control. We can offer that. Force, or bloodshed, offers you only guesswork. It was a gamble built on assumption that an organization calling itself an empire would have officers who valued strategic advantage over immediate violence. The same calculus that had saved 100 Starfleet encounters from becoming wars. Ninth Sister's masked expression didn't change, but her hand, which had drifted toward her lightsaber hilt, paused. You speak like a man who has negotiated with worse than me, she said. I have negotiated with the Borg, Picard said simply. I find honesty tends to buy time, even when it does not buy safety. A long moment stretched across the smog-filled street. Then Ninth Sister turned to the officer. Contact Coruscant Security Bureau. I want holding facilities prepared, separate cells, maximum containment rating, and a full sensor suite on all 3 anomalies during transport. Her eyes returned to Picard, and something in them suggested his gambit had bought exactly as much as he'd hoped. Time, not trust. You will accompany them, Captain. Your crew as well. The Emperor's interest in dimensional anomalies is not new. He will wish to understand what you are before deciding what to do with you. Worf's growl was barely audible, a subvocal rumble of protest at the idea of surrendering weapons and freedom to an unknown hostile power. Riker's hand found his arm, not restraining, just steadying, a silent reminder that Picard's diplomacy had bought them a path forward, rather than a firefight against overwhelming numbers. Goku glanced sideways at Superman, a question passing between them without words. We could fight our way out right now. Superman gave the barest shake of his head. Not yet. Not until they understood the shape of the board they'd been dropped onto. And not until they'd found some way to steady the tangled, unreliable power still settling in both their chests. A fight against an unknown quantity, at less than full strength, in a city of trillion souls that wasn't their own, was exactly the kind of reckless mistake the immortal art training had been trying to cure Goku of. We'll come peacefully, Goku said aloud, surprising the officer with how easily the words left him. For now, Ninth Sister's masked head tilted slightly at the qualifier, as though filing it away as a threat worth remembering. Wise, she said. Bind them. Gently, she added, when a trooper reached for restraints heavy enough to anchor a banda. I suspect gentle handling will matter a great deal before this is finished. As the troopers moved to comply, and the away team exchanged one last silent glance of shared unease, none of them noticed the flicker in the smog-veiled sky above, a second, fainter tear in reality, pulsing weakly at the edge of the same coordinates, as though the wound that had brought them here had not yet finished bleeding. The transport that carried them into the depths of Imperial Coruscant was a windowless troop carrier, its interior lit by cold blue strips that turned every face pale and hollow. Goku sat with his wrists loosely bound in a durasteel cuff, testing the restraint with idle curiosity rather than intent to break it. Not yet. Across from him, Superman's cuffs hummed faintly, some kind of energy-dampening field built into the metal, and he could feel it doing something, though not nearly as much as its designers likely intended. Picard sat beside Worf, hands folded, using the transit time the way he used every quiet moment in a crisis. to observe, calculate, and plan 3 moves ahead. Doctor, he said quietly to Crusher, you're reading on their biology? Fragmentary, she murmured back, glancing at the 2 key users across from her. Superman's cellular structure is. It's absorbing something from the ambient light, but inconsistently. Goku's readings are stranger still. His energy signature keeps fluctuating between 2 distinct states, like a system recalibrating itself in real time. Immortal art, Goku offered, catching the gist of her scan even without understanding the technical language. We were learning to combine my ki with Tao energy, old power, real old. From cultivating masters way older than either of our home worlds. We were almost there. Then the rip happened, and now it's like, he flexed his bound hands. Half my power's speaking a language the other half doesn't understand yet. Fascinating, Crusher said, and meant it clinically rather than dismissively. The transport's interior comm crackled. Energy fluctuation detected in holding Sector 3. A trooper's voice reported to someone off-channel. Both anomalies registering above threshold. Recommend immediate sedation protocol. Ninth Sister's voice cut through, cold and immediate. Belay that. Sedation on an unknown biology could kill them or could do nothing at all. I want them contained, not experimented on by frightened conscripts. We are still gathering data. Superman exchanged a glance with Goku. She's controlling her. People. Careful. Calculating. Not the mindless brutality either of them had. Half expected from an empire. That made her more dangerous, not less. The transport descended through a shaft cut deep into Coruscant's undercity, past levels of the planet-spanning metropolis that had never seen true daylight, until it settled with a hydraulic hiss into a processing bay ringed, with security stations and blast doors thick enough to stop a turbolaser bolt. Troopers herded them out into a holding facility that smelled of ozone and old fear. A place built, Picard noted grimly, for prisoners who were expected never to leave. Separate cells, as ordered, the officer said, gesturing troopers toward 3 different corridors. Captain, your crew will be held together. The 2 anomalies go to maximum containment individually. I'd request they remain together, Picard said evenly. For everyone's safety, including your own personnel's. Whatever. Destabilize their abilities. Responds unpredictably to stress. Separation may provoke exactly the reaction you're trying to prevent. It was, Picard knew even as he said it. Only half a bluff, he genuinely didn't know how Goku or Superman would react to isolation in an unknown power state. And the uncertainty itself was a useful lever. Ninth Sister, observing from the doorway with arms folded beneath her robes, considered this a reasonable caution, she said finally, surprising the officer. Hold them together. Cell 7. Full sensor suite, full guard rotation. If either anomaly's energy spikes past secondary threshold, seal the block and evacuate non-essential personnel. She turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Picard with something that might, in a being capable of it, have resembled curiosity. You bargain like a man accustomed to holding power over life and death, Captain, yet you claim no empire of your own. The Federation is not an empire, Picard said. We explore. We seek understanding before conquest. A pleasant fiction, Ninth Sister said. Every government conquers something. Yours simply calls it discovery. She left without waiting for a rebuttal, cowl sweeping the corridor's shadows behind her. Cell 7 turned out to be a reinforced chamber, with a single transparisteel wall facing the security corridor, allowing constant observation. Goku immediately went to the far corner, sat cross-legged, and closed his eyes, not sleeping, but returning to the breathing exercises from the immortal art manual, chasing the thread of first stillness that had begun to steady him. Back on the landing platform, Superman remained standing near the transparisteel, arms crossed, cataloging exits, guard rotations, structural weak points, all without appearing to do anything but wait. You're not actually planning to stay in this cell, Riker said quietly, once the guards had withdrawn to their stations. Not indefinitely, Superman agreed. But Goku's right that we're not at full strength. And I don't know this galaxy's rules well enough to fight blind. Better to learn what we're dealing with first. Picard nodded slowly, settling onto the cell's single hard bench with the patience of a man who had weathered longer captivities than this. Then let us learn quickly, he said. Because whatever the Emperor this Inquisitor answers to intends for us, I doubt his patience will outlast our own. In the observation corridor, unseen by any of them, Ninth Sister lingered at a security monitor, watching the golden-haired strangers. Meditation with an attention that had nothing to do with standard containment procedure. Something about the shape of his power, half-formed, ancient, achingly close to completion, had stirred. A memory she'd buried since her days before the Inquisitorius. A memory of a teacher, long dead, who had once spoken of powers older than the Jedi, older than the Sith, older than the Force's own recorded history. She keyed her comlink. Priority report to Lord Vader, she said quietly. I believe we have found something the Emperor will want to see for himself. Word of the anomaly reached Darth Vader within the hour, relayed through channels reserved for matters the Emperor did not wish filtered through ordinary bureaucracy. He arrived at the Coruscant Security Bureau's deepest levels shortly after midnight cycle, his presence preceding him the way a pressure front precedes a storm. Guards straightened, conversations died, and even Ninth Sister, who answered to few things in this galaxy with genuine deference, inclined her head as the black-armored figure strode into the observation corridor. Report, Vader said, his mechanical breath filling the silence between words. 3 anomalies, my lord. 2 register power signatures without clear precedent, not force-sensitive in any conventional sense, yet resonant with something adjacent to it. The third claims command of a vessel and crew from an origin he describes only as the Federation. He has proven unusually capable in negotiation. Vader's masked gaze settled on the transparent steel wall, through which Goku's cross-legged meditation and Superman's watchful stance were clearly visible. He said nothing for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice carried an edge. Ninth Sister had rarely heard from him, something almost like recognition. I have felt this before, Vader said, or something like it. A power that touches the Force without belonging to it. Bring the Golden One to interrogation. Alone. Ninth Sister's brow furrowed beneath her cowl, though she kept her voice neutral. My lord, separating them was inadvisable per my earlier assessment. Your assessment was made before I arrived, Vader said, and the matter was closed. 2 troopers entered the cell minutes later, weapons raised, and informed Goku that he was to accompany them. Superman moved to interpose himself, only for Picard's hand to land firmly on his forearm. Let him go, Picard said quietly, urgently. If we resist now, we lose whatever leverage we have. Trust that he can handle himself. Superman's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. Goku, for his part, seemed entirely unbothered, rising with the easy looseness of someone heading to a sparring match rather than an interrogation. I'll be fine, he said over his shoulder. If anything gets weird, you'll hear it. He was led through corridors of gray durasteel to a chamber bare, except for a single reinforced chair, restraint clamps, and, waiting in the shadows beyond the chamber's harsh overhead light, the black-armored figure whose presence alone made the air feel thinner. Sit, Vader said. Goku glanced at the restraint chair, then at Vader, and simply remained standing, arms loosely crossed. I'll pass if that's cool. Standing helps me think. The troopers flanking the door tensed, waiting for the outburst of temper this kind of defiance usually provoked. It didn't come. Vader merely studied the small, unassuming figure before him. Powerful shoulders, calloused hands, an energy signature that flickered between states like a star not yet decided whether to ignite. You are not afraid, Vader observed. Should I be? Goku asked, genuinely curious rather than defiant. You're strong. I can tell that much even with my ki all tangled up. But being strong doesn't automatically mean you're gonna hurt me. I've met plenty of scary-looking guys who turned out fine once you talked to them, and plenty of nice-looking ones who tried to kill me the second my back was turned. He shrugged. Kinda have to feel it out. Something in Vader's posture shifted, not quite surprise, but a recalibration. He had interrogated Jedi, rebels, senators, and spies, and all of them, in their own ways, had shown fear of him, disguised or otherwise. This creature showed only frank assessment, the way a warrior sizes up an unfamiliar opponent before a duel. Neither side had yet agreed to fight. Where do you come from? Vader asked. What is this power you carry? Ki, Goku said. Life energy, Everybody's got some, but some of us learn to really use it. Where I'm from, we train it through fighting, mostly, pushing past your limits. Again and again until you break through into something new. He paused, considering how much to share, then continued with the openness that had served him well across 100 dangerous first encounters. Lately, I've been learning something called the immortal art, combining ki with something called Tao energy, from a whole different place than where I grew up. We were real close to finishing it when the rip happened. That's probably why I feel a little scrambled right now. Vader was silent for a long moment. Then, the Tao energy you describe, does it resemble a current beneath all things? A field connecting every living being? Goku blinked, surprised by the specificity of the question. Yeah, actually, exactly like that. You know something about it. I know a power called the Force, Vader said slowly, which some who study it deeply describe in similar terms. I have long suspected the Force is not the only current of its kind in existence, merely the one this galaxy happens to swim in. He took a step closer, mechanical footfalls heavy on the durasteel floor. If your Tao energy and our Force are, as you suggest, cousins rather than strangers, then your incomplete immortal art may be the key to power beyond anything either the Jedi or Sith ever achieved. Goku's grin returned, sharp and genuine, not at the prospect of power, which had never much interested him for its own sake, but at the puzzle unfolding in front of him. So you're saying you want to help me finish it? I am saying, Vader replied, that the Emperor will want to know everything you can tell us, and that what you decide to do with that knowledge, once you understand its value, will determine whether you leave this facility as a guest or as something considerably less fortunate. Behind the mask, though no one in the chamber could see it, Vader's mind turned toward old memories of Kagan, Jin's teachings on the living force, half-forgotten philosophies the Jedi Order had abandoned in favor of dogma, and toward the faint, dangerous possibility that this small golden stranger might hold a fragment of power his master had sought his entire life. While Goku faced Vader alone, Superman paced the confines of Cell 7, with the restless energy of someone whose instincts screamed to act and whose judgment kept overruling them. Picard watched him from the bench, recognizing the particular tension of a powerful being forced into patience. You're worried, Picard said. He can handle himself in a fight, Superman said. That's not what worries me. It's that whoever just took him seemed interested, not hostile. Interested people make deals. Deals have costs nobody agrees to until it's too late. An astute concern, Picard said. In my experience, the powers that rule through fear are rarely satisfied with simple containment. They collect leverage, advantage. He rose, moving to stand beside Superman at the transparasteel wall. Tell me about this immortal art you both were pursuing. I confess a professional curiosity. I've encountered a great many forms of power in my career, some benevolent, some catastrophic. Superman considered the question, then answered honestly. Because honesty had always been the foundation Clark Kent built every other choice upon. Where I'm from, my strength comes from a yellow sun, Earth's sun. It's not something I earned, not really. I was just born able to use it. And I've spent my life trying to make sure that gift does more good than harm. He glanced at his own hands, flexing them slowly. Goku's different. Everything he has, he fought for, one limit at a time. When he asked me to train with him in the cultivation realm, to learn immortal art together, it wasn't about getting stronger for its own sake. It was about finding a kind of power that comes from understanding instead of just having. And did you find it? Picard asked. Almost, Superman admitted. We were maybe a session away from completing the first stage when the rift tore us out. Now it's like carrying an unfinished sentence in my chest. I can feel where the power's supposed to go, but I can't get there without finishing what we started. Picard absorbed this in silence, turning the implications over with the same rigor he applied to any diplomatic puzzle. A power that connected two fundamentally different beings from two fundamentally different origins, still incomplete, now stranded in a galaxy, ruled by an authoritarian regime, hungry for any advantage it could seize. He didn't need Data's tactical analysis to recognize the danger in that equation. Then I would advise, Picard said carefully, that whatever this empire offers your friend in that interrogation room, The wisest course may be to keep the true nature of your incomplete power as guarded as possible. An unfinished weapon is dangerous enough in careful hands. In the hands of an empire, it becomes something else entirely. Before Superman could respond, the cell door hissed open. Goku strode back in, escorted by two visibly unsettled troopers, who seemed relieved to hand off their charge and retreat. He looked thoughtful rather than shaken, an expression Superman had rarely seen on his friends' face outside of the deepest cultivation sessions. How did it go? Superman asked immediately. Weird, Goku said, dropping back into his corner and resuming his cross-legged seat, though his eyes stayed open this time, sharp with unresolved thought. Big guy in the black armor. Real strong, by the way. Stronger than anyone we've met here so far, thinks the Force and the Tao energy from Immortal art might be related, like cousins. He wants to know more about finishing it. Picard's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Did you tell him anything specific? Techniques, mechanisms, weaknesses? Nah, Goku said easily. I told him what it is, not how it works. There's a difference, and I figured you'd want me to keep that difference in mind. He grinned at Picard's faint, approving nod. I might fight first and ask questions later sometimes, but I'm not stupid. If a scary guy in an evil empire wants my unfinished power-up technique, maybe I don't just hand it over for free. Wise, Picard said, and meant it. Though I suspect scary guy in an evil empire is unlikely to accept refusal indefinitely, as if summoned by the observation. The corridor beyond the transparent steel wall erupted into sudden motion, troopers snapping to attention. An officer barking orders, security displays flickering to a new alert status. Ninth Sister appeared at the cell door moments later. Her usual composed authority replaced by something tighter, more urgent. Change of plans, she said without preamble. Lord Vader has requested all three of you be brought before him and the Emperor's Grand Vizier for formal assessment. Effective immediately. That sounds like an escalation, Superman said carefully. It is, Ninth Sister confirmed, and for just a moment, something almost like a warning flickered across her masked features. The Emperor does not summon anomalies for pleasant conversation. Whatever you intend to do with the time remaining before that meeting, I suggest you decide quickly what you are willing to reveal and what you are willing to fight to protect. Behind her, more troopers arrived, weapons raised, restraint clamps ready, not for punishment this time, but for transport to a level of the Imperial hierarchy where the stakes had just risen from containment to something far more permanent. The chamber they were marched into occupied a floor of the Imperial Palace reserved for matters the public record would never acknowledge, a vast, dark hall ringed with red-robed guards. Its far end dominated by a raised dais, where a hooded figure sat, waiting with the patient stillness of something that had learned to make silence itself a weapon. Palpatine did not rise as they entered. He simply watched, yellow eyes tracking each of them in turn. Picard's careful composure, Superman's guarded readiness, Goku's open, curious assessment of the room, with the unhurried interest of a collector examining new acquisitions. Captain Picard, the Emperor said, his voice a dry rasp that nonetheless carried to every corner of the hall. Explorer, diplomat, a man who believes understanding precedes conquest. A faint, humorless smile. How refreshingly naive. I found it serves better than the alternative. Your Majesty, Picard replied, inclining his head with precisely calibrated respect, enough to avoid provocation, not so much as to suggest submission. For now, perhaps. Palpatine's gaze slid to Goku and Superman. And you too. Vader tells me you carry a power still being born, a fusion of energies. This galaxy has never cataloged. Do you understand what such a thing is worth? In a galaxy built on the currency of power, we understand it's ours, Superman said evenly. And that we didn't come here looking to sell it, trade it, or hand it over to anyone. Everything is eventually sold or taken, Palpatine said. The only question is whether the price is negotiated or extracted. He rose then, descending the dais steps with unhurried menace, Vader falling into step half a pace behind him. I am prepared to offer you a negotiation, out of respect for potential rather than sentiment. Complete your immortal art here, under Imperial observation and Imperial resources. In exchange, you and your companions receive protection, autonomy, and passage home once your business in this galaxy concludes. Goku studied the offer, the way he'd study an opponent's opening stance, looking past the words, for the shape of the intent beneath them. And if we say no, then you remain anomalies, Palpatine said simply. And anomalies, left unmanaged, tend to become threats. Threats are dealt with far less pleasantly than guests. Picard felt the moment's weight settle across the chamber, a choice being offered, but not really a choice at all, dressed in diplomatic language to disguise the coercion beneath. He'd navigated 100 variations of this exact trap across his career. Hospitality that was actually captivity, cooperation that was actually surrender by installments. Your Majesty, Picard said carefully, even setting aside the question of consent, I would counsel caution. An incomplete power, forced to completion under duress and observation, may not behave as anyone anticipates. The immortal art, as I understand it, requires trust and stillness to properly integrate. Coercion is, by its nature, the opposite of both. It was, Picard knew, a genuine warning wrapped inside. A stalling tactic, buying time, while offering real substance. The oldest trick of any competent negotiator. Palpatine's smile thinned, unconvinced but intrigued. An interesting theory, Captain. Convenient, too, for men seeking to avoid cooperation. His eyes settled on Goku directly. What say you, Scion? Does the captain speak truth, or merely delay? Goku considered the question honestly, because honesty remained the only currency he trusted, in a room built entirely on manipulation. Both, probably, he said. Picard's not wrong that forcing this would probably go badly. Immortal art's not the kind of thing you can rush without breaking something important. But he's also definitely trying to buy us time. He shrugged, unbothered by his own transparency. Doesn't make him wrong, though. I've tried to force breakthroughs before. Never once worked out the way I wanted. A flicker of something, not quite approval, crossed Palpatine's weathered features at the blunt honesty. You are refreshingly unpracticed at deception, he observed. That, too, has value in its own way. He turned, robes sweeping across the dais floor as he considered his next move. Very well. I will grant you time, not out of mercy, but out of curiosity. Complete your immortal art on your own terms. Within this facility, under Vader's supervision. Prove its value organically, rather than by extraction. But know this. Patience is a resource I extend rarely and never indefinitely. Superman exchanged a glance with Goku, both recognizing the trap dressed as generosity, time bought, but time spent under watching eyes, in a cage gilded just enough to resemble hospitality. Still, time was time, and time was the one resource they desperately needed to steady the tangled, unfinished power still humming beneath both their ribs. We'll take the time, Superman said. But we finish this our way. No supervision inside the actual practice. You can watch the door, not the process. Palpatine's laugh was dry, almost genuine. Bold terms, from guests with no leverage. Maybe, Goku said, grinning despite the danger humming in the room. But you want to see what this power can become more than you want to control exactly. How we get there, that's the leverage. For a long moment, the Emperor studied the small, unassuming warrior before him, and found, to his own quiet surprise, that he could not entirely disagree. They were given a sealed chamber deep within the palace's meditation wing. Ironically, the same wing once used by Palpatine's private Force philosophers before the Jedi. Purge had rendered such contemplative spaces obsolete. Vader posted guards outside the door, but, true to the terms negotiated, left the interior unmonitored. Whether this was genuine restraint or simply confidence that nothing inside could threaten the Empire, none of them could say for certain. Picard remained outside with his away team, trusting Goku and Superman to the work only they could do, while inside the chamber the two of them settled into the same cross-legged stillness that had carried them through 6 months of joint training in the cultivation realm. Feels different here, Goku admitted, eyes closed, searching for the thread of Tao resonance Superman had first sensed on the landing platform. Weaker connection to the source, but there's something ancient under this whole planet, older than anything we found back home. The Force, Superman said quietly. Whatever it is, it's been here a long time. maybe long enough to have its own version of what we were chasing. They breathed together, the way their teacher, a wizened cultivation master who'd guided them through 6 months of grueling discipline, had taught them, not forcing the energies to merge, but inviting them, patiently, the way water finds its way around stone rather than through it. Goku's tangled ki began to unknot itself thread by thread. Superman's inconsistent solar reserves steadied, drawing not from Coruscant's poor imitation of sunlight, but from the ambient current. Beneath the city itself, the same current Vader had called the Force. Hours passed. Neither of them noticed. Outside, Vader monitored the chamber's sealed door with a stillness that mirrored the meditation within, though his thoughts moved along a very different current. He had not told Palpatine everything he suspected. The resonance he felt from within that chamber, growing, steadying, deepening, stirred something he had buried since Mustafar, since the last time he had allowed himself to hope that power might be wielded without cost, without corruption, without the endless narrowing of choices that had defined his own path from Jedi to Sith. If such a power exists, he thought, and can be achieved without the burning fury that consumed me, what does that say about the price I paid? It was a dangerous thought, and he set it aside the way he set aside all dangerous thoughts these days. Carefully, deliberately, into the deepest vault of a mind that had learned long ago. The cost of dwelling on what might have been. Inside the chamber, the breakthrough came not as an explosion, but as a settling. Like a held breath finally released, Goku felt the last tangled thread of his ki unspool and reweave itself around the ancient current beneath Coruscant, forming something neither pure ki nor pure Tao energy, but a third thing entirely, humming with a stability he hadn't felt since before the rift tore them from the cultivation realm. Beside him, Superman felt his cellular reserves lock into a new equilibrium, drawing steady power not from any single star, but from the deep, patient current itself, the same current, he now understood, that both galaxies apparently shared beneath their surface differences. Their eyes opened at the same moment. "That's it," Goku said, voice quiet with something like awe. "That's the completion." Superman flexed his hand, watching faint golden light trace along his fingers before fading. Not his usual solar glow, but something new, something that felt permanent in a way his borrowed strength never quite had. "I can feel it," he said. "It's not dependent on the sun anymore. Not entirely." The chamber door hissed open. Vader stood in the threshold, and for a long moment, he simply studied them both, sensing through the force of completion he had never witnessed in any Jedi or Sith training he'd overseen, power achieved through partnership and patience, rather than conquest or sacrifice. "It is done," he said. Not quite a question. "It's done," Goku confirmed, rising smoothly. Ki and Tao, energy humming through him in perfect balance for the first time since the rift. "Guess your boss is going to want to see this." "He will," Vader agreed. "And I suspect what he sees will trouble him more than he expects." He turned to lead them back toward the audience chamber, then paused, looking back at Goku with something almost like reluctant respect. Power achieved without the dark side's fury, without the light side's detachment. I did not believe such a path existed. "It's not really about darkness or light," Goku said, falling into step beside him. "It's about balance." Took me a long time to get that too. Behind them, unnoticed by either Sith Lord or Scion, the sealed chamber's meditation mat still bore a faint golden white afterglow, the lingering signature of two powers, born in entirely separate universes, that had finally learned to speak the same language. Outside the palace, in the smog-choked sky above Coruscant, the second tear in reality that had flickered weakly since their arrival pulsed once, brighter than before, as though responding in kind. The audience chamber felt different when they returned, charged, as though the air itself recognized that something irreversible had shifted. Palpatine sat upon his dais, Ninth Sister and a contingent of red-robed guards flanking the hall, and Picard's away team stood under careful watch near the entrance, Worf's posture rigid with barely restrained tension at the sight of Vader escorting Goku and Superman back into the chamber. "It is complete," then, Palpatine said, rising from his throne with the slow deliberateness of a predator confirming its prey had finally wandered into range. "Vader tells me the resonance from that chamber was unlike anything he has sensed." "Show me." Goku exchanged a glance with Superman. They had anticipated this moment, had discussed it. In fact, during the quiet hours of their meditation, weighing exactly how much to reveal and exactly what price such a demonstration might carry. We'll show you, Superman said. But we're not weapons for hire, and we're not staying past today. That was the deal. The deal, Palpatine said, was time to complete your art, and protection while you did so. I have honored both terms. Precisely. His smile carried the particular coldness of a man about to reveal that generosity had never been the point. What happens now depends entirely on what I decide your completed art is worth to the Empire's future. And I suspect, gentlemen, that its worth may prove considerable enough to reconsider the terms of your departure. The threat landed exactly as intended. Picard stepped forward despite Worf's restraining hand. Your Majesty, we negotiated in good faith. I negotiated in patience, Palpatine corrected. Patience is not the same as charity. Captain, did you truly believe an empire built on the acquisition of power would simply release the two most extraordinary specimens it has encountered in decades? The moment they proved that extraordinary, Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence that followed. And for a moment, something in his posture, subtle, almost imperceptible, shifted toward the two immortal art practitioners rather than toward his master. My lord, Vader said slowly, I gave my word alongside yours. Containment now, after honoring the terms of completion, would constitute betrayal not merely of these strangers, but of the bargain that brought them here willingly rather than by force. Palpatine's yellow eyes flicked toward his apprentice, surprise flickering beneath decades of practiced control. You would counsel mercy, Lord Vader? I would counsel, Vader said. That power taken by betrayal corrodes the one who takes it. I have learned this lesson at considerable cost. I do not recommend you learn it the same way. It was, Picard realized with quiet astonishment, the closest thing to genuine conviction he had yet heard from the black-armored enforcer, and it changed nothing about the calculation on the Emperor's face, which had already moved past persuasion into contingency. Sentiment, Palpatine said dismissively, is a luxury for those not responsible for an empire's future. He raised a hand, and the red-robed guards shifted, weapons rising in perfect unison. Take them, all of them. If the Scion and the Kryptonian resist, subdue them, carefully. Their power is now considerably more valuable intact. The chamber erupted. Goku moved first, not toward Palpatine, but toward the nearest guards threatening Picard's away team. He and Tao energy flowing through him in a seamless current. That turned his strikes into blurs of golden-white light. Superman followed a half-second later, catching two guards. Blaster bolts on an outstretched palm and redirecting the energy harmlessly into the ceiling, rather than striking back. Restraint even now, even here, the same restraint that had defined him his entire life. Worf and Riker moved to shield Crusher and Data's away team counterpart. Phasers set to stun, while Picard shouted for a fighting retreat toward the chambers. Exit rather than engagement with an unwinnable numbers advantage. Vader, extraordinarily, did not move to stop them, instead intercepting two guards who moved to flank Superman from behind, his lightsaber flashing crimson, as he cut them down, with the same brutal efficiency he'd once reserved for Jedi. Go, Vader said, low enough that only Goku heard it over the chaos. I will delay him. This is not a debt. It is a choice. Palpatine's fury, when it came, arrived as lightning, blue-white arcs of dark side power lancing from his fingertips toward Goku, who caught the bolt in cupped palms, the way he might catch a stray blast from Beerus himself. Feeling the crackling energy strain against the new, balanced power humming in his core, it hurt. It did not break him. Impossible, Palpatine hissed, redoubling the assault. Not impossible, Goku said through gritted teeth, pushing back against the lightning with Tao-tempered ki until the arc reversed, driving Palpatine back a staggering step. Just something you've never seen before. Behind them, the second rift in reality, the one that had pulsed weakly in the sky since their arrival, tore open in full, blinding white-gold light flooding the chamber's high windows, as though the universe itself had chosen this exact moment of crisis to offer its verdict. The light poured through the shattered windows of the audience chamber, like a second dawn, And for a moment, even Palpatine's fury faltered, his yellow eyes narrowing against a brilliance that outshone every artificial illumination the palace possessed. The rift hung above Coruscant's skyline now, fully formed, a seam of white gold, energy pulsing in rhythm with the balanced power humming through Goku and Superman both, as though they wound in reality and the completion of their immortal art had always been two halves of the same event, waiting for this exact moment to resolve. It's opening because we finished it, Superman realized aloud, catching a final volley of blaster fire on his forearm without flinching. The art wasn't just about power. It was about balance, and balance is what closes the tear. Vader, still holding the chamber's flank against a fresh wave of guards, called out without turning. Then finish what you started and go. I can hold this only so long. Picard, dragging Data's counterpart toward the exit with Worf covering their retreat, understood immediately what Vader was offering. Not victory, but passage. Goku, Superman, we need to move, now, while the opening holds. Goku caught Palpatine's next bolt of lightning on an open palm, redirected it into the chamber floor hard enough to crater the durasteel, and turned toward the rift with the reluctant clarity of a warrior who knew this fight could be won, but understood winning it would cost more than either galaxy could afford. Superman, the crew, first. We can hold the door. They fought a retreat rather than a victory, which cost Goku more pride than any defeat might have, but the immortal art had taught him, in its final lesson, that restraint was its own kind of strength. Superman swept Crusher and the remaining away team members toward the widening rift with careful speed, while Goku and Vader together held the chambers, guards at bay in an alliance neither had planned nor would ever fully explain to their respective sides. Palpatine, robes torn, composure cracking at the edges, screamed something about betrayal as Vader turned from the guards toward the rift himself, not to follow, but to ensure Picard's retreating team crossed safely. Why? Picard called back to him, pausing at the rift's threshold. Because power taken by force corrodes, Vader said, echoing his own words from moments before. And because I find, after all these years, that I would still rather see something achieved than something merely destroyed. It was the closest thing to an answer he would ever give. Goku was the last through, throwing one final glance back at Palpatine, beaten back, but not defeated, already rallying fresh guards, already calculating his next move in a game that would continue long after this chapter closed. Balance costs something every time, Goku said quietly, more to himself than anyone, before the light swallowed him whole. The rift sealed the instant the last of them crossed. The audience chambers shattered windows going dark, Palpatine's fury echoing unheard into a night that would remember this encounter only in classified reports and Vader's carefully guarded silence. They emerged not into the cultivation realm, and not onto the crippled deck of the Enterprise, but into a quiet clearing, somewhere between both worlds, a liminal space the completed immortal art itself had carved as its final gift, stable enough to let each traveler find their own way home from here. Data's signal chirped faintly nearby. The Enterprise had been pulled through as well, damaged but intact, waiting in the pale light of a sky that belonged to neither galaxy. We'll take it from here, Captain, Superman said, extending a hand. Picard shook it firmly. It has been an honor, gentlemen. I suspect the Federation will find your story difficult to classify, but easier, I think, to believe than most. Goku grinned, already feeling the vast, balanced hum of his completed power settling into place like a second heartbeat. Tell your crew thanks for not shooting first. As Picard's team retreated toward their waiting ship, and the golden white light of the closing rift faded into an ordinary sky, Goku and Superman stood together in the quiet, two warriors from separate universes, forever changed by a galaxy they'd never intended to visit, carrying home a power that had cost an empire's wrath and a Sith Lord's quiet mercy to complete. Somewhere behind them, on a world neither would likely see again, a black-armored figure stood alone in a ruined chamber, wondering, for the first time in 20 years, whether corrosion was truly the only path power could take. The rift closed, but its lessons did not fade so easily. Goku and Superman returned to the cultivation realm forever changed, their immortal art complete, born not from conquest, but from partnership across impossible distances. Somewhere in a galaxy far, far away, an emperor nursed his fury and an empire's fear of the unknown, while a Sith Lord kept a secret he would carry to his own reckoning. That mercy, once tasted, cannot be entirely unlearned. Captain Picard logged the encounter as inconclusive, unclassifiable, and among the most instructive of his long career. Some doors, once opened, never fully close, and somewhere in the space between galaxies, a golden light seems still waited, patient, for the next impossible convergence.